Excellent. Well, pleasure to meet you, Rachel. I didn't do an intro in the previous panel, so I apologize. I was told I need to make a quick intro. So I own a private equity firm, Portier Gate Capital. I'm the founder of that private equity firm. Been on Wall Street my whole life, but I'm here today as chairman of IBC Group, largest media company on X, one of the largest incubators in the world, a very proud partner of DNA, who have, alongside us, hosted this lovely event. We work with 600 projects, 35 hardcore incubatees, but 600 projects, many of them are on Binance. I come from the sort of Web 2 world, so I'm very excited to meet Rachel, because Rachel's CMO of Binance. And she's been there since 2023, but it's really interesting. When I went through her background, she had a very, celebrated career at Havas, one of the biggest marketing agencies in the world. And to see Binance capture someone from that part of the world and bring you to crypto, a bunch of degens, a bunch of, animals out of cages, I would say, right? I mean, we're a wild bunch. Maybe you can, Rachel, you can start off by telling us about the culture shock and how on earth did you pick Binance, given you were CMO of Havas? And of course, she has another background in sports, marketing, and a lovely career. You could read all about her, but tell me about the culture shift and why.
That's a great question. I spent nearly 20 years working in marketing, in media, in entertainment and sports, as you shared. And I've been really lucky at every stage of that career to work with some of the most forward-thinking and pioneering individuals, whether it came to social media, whether it came to, I worked on the IBM Watson campaign, 10 years ago. I moved into the sports entertainment space because I could see that cultural marketing was taking over, and where best to do that other than creative artist agency. And through that journey, really being at the center and the heart of sports and entertainment, one of the big platforms I was working with was Formula One. And I think everyone in this room has probably attended a Formula One. I call it the crypto parties. Every time you go, it's like you get your business done and then you get to have a party afterwards and what was extraordinary about that, obviously that is a sport that's one of the most technologically advanced, but through that journey, I got to spend a lot of time with some of the original founders, the degens, the builders, the developers, who were all trying to make their brands and businesses relevant to a broader audience. And, I can't help myself. I kept giving advice of, well, you need to be doing this, and, far beyond what my remit was at CAA. And through that, I had a few of the founders ask me if I would come join and, work to lead their brand and marketing. And I made the jump in 4.5 years ago now to one of Binance's main competitors. Spent a year there building out their brand ecosystem. And then ended up on the negotiating table against CZ and Richard Tang, which was how they discovered me. And when they come calling, it's pretty hard to say no to CZ and Hayi. So after a couple of months of discussion, I made the jump in. That was 2.5 years ago. I was officially announced the same day as our DOJ issue. About an hour afterwards, I hadn't even had a chance to update my LinkedIn. And all I can say is, for everyone in this room, like you've been in this journey a long time. It's a phenomenal privilege to see where we sit today. I think 2 years ago, we were in a very different place where most people were closing their doors to me anyway, saying, we're not going to touch crypto, whether that be the publishers, the media, the platforms, whereas today, I've just left our clubhouse at Token. And what was extraordinary is we had Meta, we had YouTube, we had Amazon, we had all of, the most trusted tech brands in the world there asking us, like, how do we break into this community more? And how do we, engage with the community more? And, I think that's credit to the work, not just that Binance has done, but also the work that the players in this room, have done.
Very interesting. I'm gonna get back to that. But actually, I can't help myself. I gotta get this. So DOJ and your timing was good because a lot of that. But I have to say, I was very impressed because I was at Goldman Sachs in the 90s and early 2000s. I worked in a department where Elliot Spitzer was marching in the corridors, and we had a monstrous DOJ settlement. They went after Wall Street, the big bad banks and everything. And I just watched how Binance dealt with that. And it had an elegance that was not crypto-like. It wasn't. And so I just wanted to know, what is the marketing strategy? Because I want to talk about brand power next. But there was a very, very refined marketing scheme around a lot of DOJ work, regulatory, in many different jurisdictions. Nigeria, New York, crackdown here, crackdown there. And if you could just walk me through your influence and what is the strategy? Because it seems pretty good. Like, you're always unscathed.
Didn't feel like that at the time, but I'm glad that it appeared outside worlds that was the case. And, look, the work we're only 7.5 years old as a business. We operate in 100 countries. We just hit 265 million users. And there was a lot of, I think our founding team was extraordinary, that they very quickly became the leader in the market once they launched. And they continued to disrupt and break and push that ball uphill. And things broke on the way up. And they were technologists, they were developers, they were founders. They didn't know how to do everything. They brought in, the best of what they thought were advisors and worked on that. But, if we think about it, for where we are today, it's pretty extraordinary, what happened and how that was evolved. But the work, wasn't just around marketing and comms. It goes much deeper than that. I think, you being in Goldman Sachs, it's cross-functional effort to ensure that, this industry is, the roots of it are about transparency and about building trust. That was like why it was, the original birth of our industry. And I think our founders stayed very true to that and focused on, with our community first approach, focus on being as transparent as we were able to be within the, rules of engagement. We were dealing with some pretty serious people. And we shared that, and we were honest around the fact that mistakes has been made. At that stage, there had already been very deep work done with many of the tier 1 and tier 2 regulators around the world. And we were in constant communication with them. At that stage, we were also still, what I always think is ironic. I joined Binance when they were the most regulated exchange and still are the most regulated exchange globally. I think we had 18 licenses at the time. We have 22 licenses now, and we have more coming. And I think the focus was really like focusing on the community, clear, transparent communication, ensuring that we were oversharing and consistent with our messaging around what we were doing to show that we were growing up. And that after that initial, period where the mistakes were made, we had brought in the right, senior leaders. We had brought in, the right teams. Like, we have a compliance team and a legal team of over 1,000 people now. I know more about compliance than most marketers know in any regulated business.
So you gave me the word because I was thinking about this. What is it? I said eloquent. I said it was seamless, unscathed. Actually, the word is exactly how I feel. That the brand is grown up. That's very powerful what you said, because how you dealt with it, so different to FTX, so different to, we became famous. Actually, we had one big famous growth spurt. It was the debacle of FTX. It was covered live on our show for 3 days in a row with whistleblowers, and the immaturity of the industry stuck out. And you guys came up, grown up. Let's talk about brand power because it ties to this. Every day I use this, but I don't say Apple 20 times a day. I don't. I say iPhone. I don't, in my laptop, I don't say the word Microsoft. In our industry, we say Binance freaking 20, 30 times a day. I just noticed that. It's like good and bad, by the way. It's always around us, right? Tell me what brand power is and what does Binance mean to you? What is it?
Well, it's funny that you say it's good and bad.
No, it is good and bad. And we get frustrated as well. Absolutely, you get frustrated.
No, it's true. I know, but that's how the active listening and how we're responding to that is critical. But I say that because, look, brand power in our industry as it relates to Binance isn't just about awareness and recognition. Like, we are lucky. We are the number one brand in the industry. We have the most market share. It's about engagements. It's about being able it's not just about the functional response you have. When people talk about Binance, they might have a positive or negative emotional response, but they have a response, which means that we're talked about. People want to engage with us. Whether you're someone that's entirely new to this industry and starting your journey, you tend to go to Binance Academy or Binance is your first port, or whether you're I spent Sunday and Monday with our top 100 clients, our top 100 traders. They've been on our platforms, since day one. And, they're like, you're a necessary evil, but you also actively listen and admit when you've made mistakes, then you evolve and you get better. So I think that when it comes to brand power for us, it's really about ensuring that we build that trust. We continue to stay relevant. It's very easy to become irrelevant very quickly. And we're constantly looking at what we need to do for our community and the spectrum of different types of users that we have. And I would say we have a founding team that's still highly engaged. Bar, obviously our shareholder, and former CEO who is now driving YZI Labs and BNB Chain. But we have a founding team who's still engaged and we're on social 24/7, on communities 24/7, listening to our retail users, listening to our institutional users. We're discussing that on leadership calls in the morning and the evening every day, what we need to change. We're being agile and adapting. And I think that's where I'm so lucky and privileged in the role that I'm in. Driving brand and driving, marketing within the business, because, I've got the power of, 6,000 people at Binance that's ensuring that we are operating on all cylinders, to ensure that we drive that equity and we drive that community and continue to grow.
Amazing. Guys in the back, please keep it a little bit lower, please. I apologize. Thank you. By the way, I'm enjoying this interview. When I don't use my notes, I know I'm really enjoying. I'm going to ask you a tough one, okay? Because you said grown up, we're talking about trust. You're one of the largest financial institutions, period, globally. Banks. So you're in the trust business.
Yeah, we just beat Santander, which is the largest.
There you go. In Spain. Santander in Spain. Absolutely. My question to you, and probably in market cap, way bigger than, I would say, 95% of the financial institutions, banks. No more. Binance is innovative, very innovative. You have a very beautiful community, but you've introduced perps, you've introduced meme coins. Where do you go from providing solutions to people to being an entertainment platform? And I mean this is not. How do you manage community when people can make real riches and can lose everything? I'm just curious.
Look, that's through education. And look, I want to talk about meme coins for 1 second. I did a panel discussion earlier on at the Clubhouse about this subject. Meme coins are a marketer's dream in many ways, because I know when I have my friends from Goldman Sachs and from Morgan Stanley texting me, asking me, okay, which meme coin should we be buying, that it's permeated culture. And I know not everyone in this room likes it, but they are a gateway to mass adoption. And they are fun, they're entertaining in a world where everyone is looking for an outlet, something that's frivolous and entertaining and fun. What we as exchanges and as industry players have to do is, once we've hooked those individuals, we have to educate them on how to remain in the industry in a safe and secure way, to your point. And that's where education is critical. I spent a lot of time recently in Kenya, in Pakistan. I've been in Poland recently. People are, our retail users, some of them are putting, they're investing their entire, value on our exchange. So we are obliged and we have a responsibility to ensure that we are helping protect them from themselves through education. We have huge programs from Binance. We've 43 million people educated themselves on Binance Academy last year, which is our masterclass for the crypto industry. But we also hosted 2,000 events last year, not beautiful, elegant events like this. These were events where individuals, I was in one in Kenya. We had 500 people turn up. 500 people were waiting on the guest list outside that wanted to just educate themselves on how to enter into this space in a way. And that's where we as centralized exchanges in the broader industry had to educate. And furthermore to that, it's one of the reasons we take security and user protection so seriously, and why we are committed to regulation, even though many of the degens don't love that, is because we need to ensure that we're bringing users into the industry and keeping them safe, keeping them protected, educating themselves on the right user protocol, security protocols. It's a critical part of the journey we're on. So I could talk a long time on it. I don't know to bore anyone.
No, this is fantastic, Rachel. I'll give you a layup here. Amongst the many businesses I own Krispy. I'm a shareholder in Krispy Kreme Nigeria and Dodo Pizza in Nigeria, and thanks to Binance, I was able to do business. Literally. I could not do businesses. Capital controls, couldn't get money in or out or whatever. Binance became the bank. So I see that. But let's dovetail to that. So you are in all these markets, lots of regulations. You have a huge market share. From how do you increase market share from here? Like, are you growing the crypto market, or are you taking share? I think the answer is both, right? But how do you think about that?
We discuss growth and CP. Like every morning, I check our CP in every single one of our top 100 markets and where we've lost and where we've gained versus our competitor. We're obsessed with data. It informs every single thing we're doing from a marketing and from a growth and from an operations perspective. And we adapt our marketing strategies on a daily, if not half daily basis on what we need to do there. Look, it's a top down and bottom up approach. Binance was built by our community. It was built through grassroots marketing and initiatives. We focus on that. We're still very much present in the crypto community, ensuring that we're participating and celebrating, our OGs, the people who stayed with us through the rougher waters. But on the flip side, we're also looking, and it's not top down or broadcast, because we've evolved so far away from that marketing approach. It's how do we also get scale? So, I came from sports and entertainment. It would be remiss of me not to talk about the power of strategic partnerships. We work with Cristiano Ronaldo, we work with Alpine, we're exploring a lot of different local initiatives, but we also are helping a lot of the Web2 brands that you and I are both very familiar with from our former world enter into this space. And that's another type of strategic partnership where bringing them in that allows you open yourself up to their audiences and help them understand. And if we're their trusted partner, then that, you have that wonderful ability to be welcomed into someone's room and into their suite of trusted brands in a way that is unique, that no amounts of paid advertising or digital marketing is going to get you through that door. Because, we know people are cynical. We know it takes, I think in the average brand world, say CPG or restaurants, it takes 6 or 7 times for someone to see your brand, for them to consider kind of engaging with you. We did some data exercises recently, and it takes about 15 touch points for like a normie to even consider. And then you think about how many of the centralized exchanges start with B. So you have to think about how do you then stand out as Binance, to a normie who doesn't understand this space. So it's really through, meeting people where they are at the point where they're ready to jump in, and ensuring then that we're not just there on day one, that we're repeatedly talking to them and educating them and bringing them on a journey that's suitable for their use case of crypto. It's not just traders anymore or institutions. It's toddlers, it's business entrepreneurs. So
yeah, you just said something I realized. Yes, there's so many B's. The Bidmark, BitGet, Bybit, Binance. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think of that.
Thankfully, we were the first.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to ask Shamdani, are you giving me the signal? Yes. One last question, and I'm going to cheat. So it's 2 questions, question 1. I only ask this question of people I really admire, be it a lawyer, a doctor, or something. And obviously, I have a lot of admiration for you. So I'm going to ask this question. You probably haven't, maybe you've been asked. And then also dovetailing on that, you're a leader for women in crypto, and I'd love for you to give some advice. But my question is, think 5 years from now. A lot of people say, oh, tell me about AI, crypto. And I'm not going to ask you that silly. I mean, it's not a silly question. I want to know, do marketing departments and CMOs get replaced by AI?
This is so interesting because I just had dinner with the global CFO of OpenAI, and we had this discussion about what are the roles that are going to be replaced in the context of this new era. And I'll be really honest, we've already integrated AI not just into our products and customer service offerings, and we've integrated it fully into the marketing team. So we're using it, to help us distill data, to help us build campaigns. We're using it from our creative output. It's actually helped us because we operate in 100 countries. It's not just about local language. It's about localization of imagery. It's about localization of videos, and it's helping us scale that, which is extraordinary. So, look, but then we got onto the topic just from the finance perspective, because I'm sure there's a lot of investors and hedge funds and VCs in this room. And, I was with that same dinner. There was a very successful, sovereign wealth funds that was present and had explained that they were replacing a lot of their analysts with AI. So, thankfully, it's not just marketing that has to evolve. It's every division within every business. But no, I think that what we need to remember is AI is going to help us scale and operationalize and be able to be more personalized and more one-to-one, which was a holy grail, 10 years ago in marketing, what we all hoped social media would do. But the human, especially when it comes to emotional connections and building meaningful relationships, the human perspective and intuition and empathy. Like, don't get me wrong, the APIs are going to get pretty smart, pretty quickly, but we still have a long way to go on that. And that was one thing that I was so happy to hear from a senior executive in OpenAI, that they were like, the one area is marketing and comms, because we need those people that can think and have the intuition and empathy to be able to think quickly. So look, it's definitely evolving, but we're embracing it wholeheartedly. Like, I see AI as a companion to help us hit that 1 billion mark. Because let's be honest, I think we all recognize in this room, it's amazing to see Token this week and the crypto community take over Dubai, but we're still early. We're still so far away from mainstream adoption in retail and institutional. Like, until we have crypto in the hands of at least 1 in 7 of our population, until it's solving, the issue of 1.8 billion on bytes properly, we're not there. So, I would argue that everyone in this room and many of the institutional and, the newbies coming in that I'm meeting this week that are like, oh, we're so late. I'm like, you're actually not. You're part of the journey to get there. So on the topic of females, so I'm going to be really honest. And my comms person who's sitting staring at me may not be happy about this. But since I started my career 20 years ago, I've been asked about what it feels like to be a woman in an industry that's male dominated, whether it be advertising, whether it be sports, whether it be entertainment. I would argue that the crypto and blockchain industry, its roots and principles are based on gender fluidity. When I joined Binance, I wasn't able to tell half my team whether they were female or male because they were using avatars and using DGen names. So, like, that is the beauty of our industry. At Binance, like, I'm on the management team. We're 40% management committee. We're 38% female.
Wow, that's good.
Our total workforce is 38% female, and my marketing team, and I may be a little biased, is 52% female of 250 individuals. And look, I spent the last 2 days meeting with many projects, new founders, and there was a female in every room, and I don't think they were just the token female. So look, while we always need more women to get involved, from a retail perspective, we're naturally more conservative. So that's where my job is to work harder of bringing them in. But, I think we're on track, and I see there's a good representation of women in this room. So it's not like, a usual CAC summit that you'd see in Palo Alto where it's 95% males. So I think we're on a good path.
No, thank you, Rachel. And thank you so much for helping our industry grow up. if I had that last say. You're really, really doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.